Does a fixed blade need hand guards? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Stick around. Many of you right off the bat are saying yes. Some are saying no. But let's get down to the context of it. I guess you could say that this video is a part 2 to one that I made a while back titled, "Don't Buy These Kinds of Knives." And that video was about everyday carry fixed blades that did not have any protection for the hand whatsoever. And that video got a lot of views and there was a lot of input. There was a lot of people who agreed with what I was saying, and then there was a lot that did not agree, that did not believe that hand protection was necessary on a fixed blade. I personally advocated for the fact that I believe that some resistance is necessary. I'm not saying you got to have these massive guards, but that some protection was necessary. And you know, a lot of people were saying things in the comments like, if you knew how to use a knife, you wouldn't need protection for the hand. You know, what about this model, and what about that model, and what about this one? And they were throwing all these different examples at me. And in this video, I'm going to stand my ground a little bit. Now, I'm not completely and totally discounting knives that don't have hand protection, because I know that you can simply do an ice pick grip and use the thumb as your brace, especially if you just want to go in this position. Now, this is the Disciple from ShivWorks, but it still has a hand guard. This is the closest thing I have in my whole collection to being something that doesn't have much of a hand guard, but it still does. As you can tell, I've got that groove there for my hand to rest. Really, no matter which position I hold this in, I've got something to fall against right there. But I understand that you can take a fixed blade that, say, it has no guard, and you can hold it this way. You can hold it in the ice pick position. I understand that people use shanks all the time. I'm not saying that it's completely useless, but why did I say in that video that you shouldn't buy a knife like that? I was simply stating that why buy something with limitations when you don't have to? But enough about that video. Let's get down to this one. Does a fixed blade need sufficient hand protection? My answer would be, it depends on how you use it. There are different ways to grip a knife. I'm going to pull out my tactical Essie here. This is the Essie 4, the double-edged tactical version, and it's going to vary. If you're holding a knife like this in a hammer grip, traditional type of grip this way, let's just say that you're thrusting in your defense and you collide with bone or a solid part of that body. Without a guard, it is very likely in the heat of the moment that your hand could slide up and make connection with that blade if you did not have some resistance pushing back against you. It's my personal opinion that if you grip this way or even this way, that some resistance is needed. I'm not saying you need guards that come out to here, but it's my opinion that some protection for the hand is useful, especially in this position. Now, you could switch and you could go here. You could hold this thing in reverse. You could do the ice pick. You could put your thumb here, as I was talking about a minute ago, and you're going to have a lot of stability that way. Even still, though, I've got some extra added security right here. Who's to say your thumb won't slip off the side? It just depends on how you hold it. Take this Havoc, for example. There are so many knives that are designed this way that don't have this extra added protection right here. The design looks cool, but why would I choose that design over something that's got a little bit of reinforcement here? Should I be in this position? Should I have to thrust? I mean, I can still do this grip, but I have the protection even if my thumb slips or something happens. I'm just not limited, man. It ultimately, though, comes down to preference. If there is a blade design that you love that has no guard, well, you're a grown-up. You can get it. The thing is, you just have to understand its limitations. Does a knife have to have a hand guard? Well, of course not. Does it help in a very serious way? Yes. I've got people in my community, per se, that carry appendix that pull here and they're in this position. So they're automatically in that ice pick position to strike. You know, and this is pretty much how they utilize their knife. To the person who trains to draw in the ice pick position, to strike in the ice pick position, it may not be as big a deal for them to have a hand guard if that's their style and if they train and they're prepared to make contact with something hard in that position. But for those who do traditional grip, there's somebody who's going to need a guard a little bit more than somebody like that. I'm not saying that it's impossible to fight or defend using a knife if there's no guard. I'm just saying there are certain positions where a guard is almost a must. So we've established the fact that with ice pick, you've pretty much developed your own hand protection this way, and that you train with it, you know, regardless of which position you strike from. Let's just say that you hold it this way and you love a particular blade design that doesn't have a guard and you carry it every day, and even the thoughts of somebody saying you need a hand protection offends you. Well, how are you training to make sure that your hand doesn't slide up that knife if you come in contact with something just like this that's difficult? Or let's just say you're holding it like this. It's one of those knives that doesn't have a guard, but it's got some jimping right here. What happens when you come in contact with something hard, or maybe a hip in the heat of the moment, and everything gives way and your hand slides up? Because no matter how trained you are, this is a possible reality. It's not about how much credentials you have in training. It's just about reality. These things happen. You got to be careful with this anyway, with certain strikes, because you can put pressure on the thumb and break your thumb. If you have a knife with no guard and you slice into soft tissue, that's obviously not going to be a factor, but it could be if you slice here and you thrust here. So the reason why I like a little bit of a guard is because sometimes I like to hold it this way and sometimes this way. I get that some of you guys are trained and you know what you're doing, but there's a lot of people out here who don't. In the end, you do you, but you need to know the danger of cutting your own hand in self-defense. If you're using a fixed blade with no guard, you do have something that's a little bit more of a liability, so make sure you're training properly maintaining that blade in a conflict. Again, the ice pick is a good way to stabilize your blade, but your thumb can move, can slip. Guards will not. And even a subtle guard is better than no guard. But whatever you use, know its capabilities, its weaknesses, and train with it. So I'll end with a question. What are your thoughts on all of this? If you're someone who carries a blade that has no guard, what is your preferred go-to style for making sure that your hand is protected during a conflict? Thanks for watching. Take care.